And we live. Hello and welcome, everyone. It's time for another exciting episode of IT Career in Australia channel. And tonight's discussion is about traditional versus agile project management. So what's the key differences? So join us for a panel discussion about project management and tech industry, where our speakers will talk about the contrast and sometimes the blurry lines between those two methodologies. So this session is designed to clarify the unique advantages and challenges of both traditional and agile approaches, and also will try to provide some insight into how each can influence project outcomes and team dynamics. So our speakers will offer some real-world experience to help demystify these methods, addressing the confusions that often arise when choosing choosing a path for your project management career as well. So whether you're a newcomer or looking to refine your project management skills, this discussion will give you essential knowledge and real life experience, which is important. So make sure to get your questions ready and make sure to introduce yourself in the comments, or at least say hi in the comments. It's nice that you say hi because we know that you're here and you're listening. I'm Jana Martins, if you forgot. So I'm passionate about learning more about present and future of the tech industry in Australia and sharing this obviously on my YouTube channel here. So before I pass it over to our speakers to introduce themselves, just a quick reminder that we're streaming on LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you on LinkedIn, you might want to jump to my YouTube channel, as sometimes LinkedIn comments not going through. So YouTube is more reliable, but it's if you're watching us on LinkedIn, it's totally fine as well. So you can also might want to join my meetup group where I post the new events, so you can make sure you register for all the future events. And we have a face-to-face event in Melbourne every few weeks. So we're going for a walk around Albert Park and Lake. So please, if you're in Melbourne especially, make sure to join my meetup group. And I also have another stream on Tuesday mornings, more about productivity and time management hacks. So there's a lot going on. Please make sure to check it out. And I always encourage you to use these live streams, not just to, know some, gain some new knowledge, but to network with people in the industry. We have quite a few people joining. James is here, Jay is here, Dirash is here, Radhika is here. So thank you guys for saying hi. It's really important you say hi, thank you. Lakesh is here, project manager based in Melbourne. Vikram is here. Thank you guys for saying hi. And I'm going to pass it on to our speakers now to introduce themselves. So, Jan, we'll start with you.
Sure. Thank you, Jana. Hi, everyone. My name is Johan. I operate in the capacity of either a business agility coach or as a delivery lead. So I come from a program, project, and delivery background. I've led DevOps practices in the past as well. And over the last 5+ years, I've been working as a business agility coach.
Perfect. Thank you. Richard, what's about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rich Stockton. I've got about 30 years technology experience. I currently work for as the founder of IT Cubed in project management and recovering projects.
Thank you. And Craig, over to you.
Hey everyone, my name's Craig. I've worked in project management and agile organizations. The overlap, the Venn diagram of overlapping project and agile for me started in 2003. So it's been a long ride. Here we are today, 2024. That's 21 years, old enough to drink in the United States.
Perfect. So we have quite a few people joining us today. Thank you guys for saying hi. Ruma's here, Wilson's here, Martin's here. The YouTube link is in the comments, Martin, on LinkedIn. You can have a look. Stephen is here. Good evening, all. Hi, Richard. Here we go. Some, familiar faces, I guess, here. So I think my first question, obviously, we're talking about this difference between two project management methodology today. But just before we go to those key differences, maybe just if you guys tell a little bit more about your career, and a little bit more about, where do you use the agile or traditional project management yourself. So if we could go a little bit more about your experience first, that would be great. Maybe we'll start with Craig now.
Hey, how you doing? I started in working as a business analyst, tech support first, and then business analyst, and then project manager at Optus in the 90s. And Optus's project management methodology in those days was infused with what we would call lean principles and practices these days. I guess some of the people that set up Optus had been management consultants from the United States, and they'd come along and they had all these libraries of tools that you could kind of, figure out how to run a project. And things like Six Sigma were kind of part of the standard project planning, like how to find a problem and how to kind of measure a problem and all that sort of stuff. And so, that then meant that a lot of the projects we did were very kind of that style, even though there was a PMI oriented project management lifecycle in place. And then later in the early 2000s at ANZ Bank of all places, I came across XP, and then shortly afterwards learned about Scrum. And during those times, I was doing a master's in project management, as a matter of fact, at RMIT University. And one of the things that I did as a side study for myself, it wasn't part of the curriculum, but I did a benchmarking of what is considered best practices or good practices in project management according to PMI and the United States Department of Defense, and the UK version of the same thing and all that sort of stuff, and then mapped it to what was in 2003, 2004 good practice in Agile. And I feel like, while there's different things in Agile, like software development practices, which aren't specifically project management, the only point of difference I found was fixed time boxes of Scrum, which was really popular in those days, versus project management kind of had there's a start and an end date of a job, right? And you would start that job and you would end that job and you would tick it off as done. But also inside the project management body of knowledge at the time, there was something around, I guess the meme of it is like, how long do you want to wait until you find out something's not working, right? And so weekly or fortnightly check-ins were kind of default practice for good teams anyway. So I can't come at this with like good project management and good Agile practices are the same thing. 20 years later, I've kind of cycled over that problem over and over again, and I still have the same point of view.
Here you go. Okay, so let's see how what about others people experience in this area first before we go to the debate. So, Johan, so just a little bit about your career and your experience as a project manager.
Sure. So about 20 years ago, I was working for a startup, still sort of getting into the whole work environment and so on. And they started emulating, it was a .com company, and they started emulating some of the practices that this company called Google were working through at the time. This whole thing called Agile came about, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. And started sort of working in that environment. But for myself, it was almost like, BAU. I didn't know anything different. Eventually ended up in Australia, and got Prince2 certified, got my PMP as well, and started working on some government projects. Went on to work on some large-scale system integration projects as well, delivering devices, Apple products, and so on year on year for about 5 years for one of our telcos over here. I've gone on to work in DevOps for another big tech company before moving into Agile coaching. So I've moved across almost every industry, I think, that's out there, except for defense. I worked in police, but except for defense, I think I worked in almost every industry that's out there, and seen different variations of Agile and waterfall and just delivery per se. I agree with what Craig said there. Yep. So it all sort of boils down to best practice as well. From what I've seen and what I've sort of begun to grasp upon is you've got a toolkit. You've got a toolkit of practices, be it Prince2, PMP, Agile, and all the different 1,000 flavors that sit on Agile as well. It's really drawing from what's best out there and tailoring it to the situation that you're in. That's what I've begun to learn and apply in my day-to-day.
Perfect. Thank you, Johan. And we'll just pass it on to Richard to tell a little bit about his career and his main experience in the project management.
Best for last, eh? So I started life off as a developer for a bank in South Africa. Got a really great opportunity to go and work in the UK for year 2000. It was a lot of doing the same thing about 1,000 times and being paid for it. So it was great. But I stayed in the UK and worked on software projects and enhancements and new builds for I was there for over a decade. And I went up from developer to solution designer to architect. And from there, started to realize that the young people coming through unis were a lot smarter and they had a lot cooler technology. So I got into project management, where I started helping people to shape what their delivery path needed to be like. And that's really what I guess kickstarted my career with the company that I run now, is how can you utilize the really great people on your team to deliver a good outcome? And then you start talking about what Johan and Craig have spoken about, where you have multiple tools to draw from your toolkit. What's fit for purpose for the particular piece of work you're working on now? And I would probably say the majority of my work to date has been not in best practice. It's been in what practice are you currently using and how can we enhance it? So how do we make it fit for purpose for your environment? And respecting the fact that all my clients are already in business. I haven't worked for a startup. Most of the people I work for are enterprise or large business. So they're in business, they can afford me, they know what they're doing. They just might need some help on something. And that's what I do.
Okay, so it seems like we all kind of agree that it's not about the differences, it's about the good practices in general. But I mean, the topic, we still have a topic today. You're talking about the differences between agile and traditional project management. So, I mean, in your opinion, if you still need to sort of outline that the core difference between those two methodology, in your opinion, what would be that, what do you feel that still will be that the core difference from your point of view? And we'll just randomly start with Johan on this one.
Sure. Traditional project management, if we were to summarize it, I think the best way to look at it would be to consider what we call the triple constraints of project management. So if you imagine a triangle, we've got scope, cost, and time on the different, we call the different parts of the triangle. And for the most part, they're fixed in your sort of traditional PM setup. And of course, you move one edge of a triangle, it tends to impact the others. You sort of move the scope or bend the scope a little bit, it impacts the other two edges of the triangle. And like I mentioned, they're fixed for the most part. In Agile, I'd say the cost part of it is a constraint for just using that triple constraint model. The cost side of it, the budget is limited or fixed to a certain extent, unless you're doing something really radical. On the time side of things, I think the key difference is that you tend to operate in sprints in Agile with feedback loops. And with those feedback loops, you welcome in change. So that's, I think, one of the big differences. And there's a little bit of flex on the scope side of things as well. So you have a prioritized backlog. And that gives you some flex in terms of what you pick up into your next sprint. So I think those are the key theoretical differences, summing it up into just 1 minute or so.
We like the quick answers. So, Richard, what about you? What's in your opinion the biggest difference, and does it echoing with what Johan say, or you have some?
So I'm going to go straight away from the textbooks and go into my experience. So a lot of people that are on the call might go, Richard's talking rubbish. It's so far from the truth, but this is my experience. My experience is that many times when I've worked in agile environments, people shy away from giving budgets or estimates or schedules. And this is where it's been really tricky, because I see project management overarching, and I see a lot of agile practices are really aligned to technology or software delivery. And that's usually only one stream of the project. So when you've got multiple parts of a project all aiming for a particular delivery timeline, and you have one particular stream of that project that can't estimate or give you a concrete idea of what scope you're going to get at that time frame, it becomes tricky. So that's why fit for purpose is really important, and working in iterations is really important. I love what Johan said. It really is about embracing the change when it comes, and it's about, for me, Agile is about getting the customer up front and having them really close to your team to see what it is they're actually asking for. Because typically I like to use Agile tools when there's a lot of unknowns in the project and you can work out a few of them really quickly up front. Traditional is, like a lot of people would refer to it as waterfall. I'm going to just say I've never, ever worked in a pure waterfall project ever. It's always been iterative, and it just depends how far those iterations overlap. But yeah, ultimately it always looks like a waterfall, because you need to know what you have to develop, then you need to develop it, and then you need to test it to see whether it looks like what was asked for. Yes.
There you go. So, the blurry lines continues. Craig, over to you. So what's, in your opinion, where is there any core difference?
No, not at all. Right. I mean, yeah, they're not the same and they're not different, right? Like when you apply craftsmanship to a job, like you build a bunch of competencies in a particular set of areas, right? And different disciplines, for instance, value different things in different ways. So for instance, like, you would argue that Agile development values total life cycle cost of things more than project management does, right? That's not always true, because some organizations are paying attention to total cost of life cycle during the project management phase. So, every organization's got its own case, and every organization's got its own styles and methods and tools and practices and processes and stuff. They're just stuff, right? Like, whatever, right? Like, you got a problem with a particular aspect of your organizational performance, like pay attention to that problem and look at the body of knowledge in project management, in product design, in business management, in Agile or whatever, and like find the solutions that are going to fit the problem that you've got in front of you. I think there is a couple of differences between Agile and project management, but like in the territory we talk, we're often talking the same thing. Like, I think Agile's more kind of total lifecycle management, but I don't think that's Agile. I think that's software product development, right? So when you build software products, they last forever. They don't last forever, but they last for more than a project. They keep on going for quite a while. And so some of the practices and methods that we apply to that are all about like investing not just into the goals in front of us, but thinking about the future as well, and how that's going to kind of work today is going to cost us or pay us off in the future, right? Whereas projects have got more constraints on them around the time, cost, schedule thing, right? And so we make different decisions based on those framing constraints.
Go. So we have quite a few comments coming in. I just want to quickly acknowledge, so obviously a few people saying hi, but Martin, so if you're commenting on LinkedIn, it's not going to show on YouTube and vice versa, but you can comment on either of the platforms as long as we can see it, because sometimes we can't see the comments from the LinkedIn. That's why I mentioned that it's sometimes better to comment on the YouTube. It's a few comments here. Good point, Richard. I work with a VR company where we delivered hardware using a lean MFG type of approach, and software with an agile approach. In fact, they align pretty well, just separate streams. So, I mean, you all mentioned that it's all fit for purpose and the different projects can use different methodology. But in your experience, do you think that some sort of types of projects are best suited for more agile versus traditional project management? For example, Rich, you already sort of mentioned that when it's more uncertainty, kind of it tends to be more agile. But it's also, I don't know, maybe smaller companies use agile more, agile kind of the methodology more, or is it more complex projects? Like, do you think in your experience that you can put some sort of types of project that's suited more to the different methodology? Who is that? Maybe we'll start with Craig at this time.
Yeah, sure. I think the answer is, I think that's the wrong question. Sorry, Yana, but you knew I was going to say that at one point. Like organizations, like Agile at a brand new startup is a messy clusterfuck of chaos, right? Agile at a mature product company, like say MYOB or REA or something like that, brings a lot of craftsmanship and discipline to the table and brings organization and calmness and steadiness and reliability. Then you go into corporate Australia and you have a look at Agile there. And yeah, it seems like it's a more favorable framework for delivery, but they're not using the same Agile context as startups and as product companies. It's more like a version of project management, right? And yeah, there's things in sprints and like monthly or fortnightly or whatever checks, and like, there's things about like continuous delivery and so forth. Every time you kind of reach an endpoint in something and you check or validate with some external third party, whether that's business stakeholders or users out on the internet or whatever, it's an opportunity for you to assess how much risk you're carrying and to decide what to do next, right? So are you on track? Is the quality the right standard? Have you configured the product right for the problem? Have you kind of designed the right experience, etc.? You can kind of check that and then you can make corrections, right? If you haven't got decision-making rights to be able to make corrections, cool. Like at least you're still, as an organization, able to see what you're doing and you can kind of make some corrections. And I think that's the essence of it for me, right? Like project management is the same, right? Project management in a lot, say Leighton's or something like that, like a big national construction company, they've got a lot of methods and processes and stuff. Project management at a bank, IT departments, they've got their kind of version of things. Project management at a software agency like Everest, right? Like we've got our conventions and practices, and they don't really look like each other when you put them next to each other, but there are these principles that sit underneath them that support the decision making and the way we work together that should be coherent, right? And if they're not coherent, it's because there's bad practice going on, a lack of craftsmanship, insufficient mentoring, that kind of stuff.
There you go. So, Richard, over to you. So, do you feel like some project more suitable for particular methodology?
I'll go with that. I would say, in my opinion, if you're going to go more pure Agile, I would say align yourself to a product that you can get that continuous improvement flow, because you really want to have the continuous team. You want to have building IP in the product. You want to have decision making all the way through to delivery and testing in one unit that isn't going to be impacted by other things happening around it. So for me, BAU is actually a really good example of where it thrives. And ironically, you've just created a silo, which is what Agile tries to break down from what typical org structures have. So I know it's probably controversial, and I can see there's going to be so many people that want to comment or chip in about that. But for me, project management's really when you're going to hit multiple products, you need somebody above to almost be the conductor of the orchestra. That's where your project management component lies. The Agile, what's really effective is when you can get the BAs, developers, business users, customers together, working together on an outcome that would form part of the project output.
I think Craig have a comment before we go to you. Craig already have a comment.
I don't think what you said is like radically incorrect, but I just think it misses some opportunity, right? Like if you put in, consistent teams and cross-functional teams and do fortnightly check and adapt kind of decision-making protocols, right? Like how can that be bad for a project?
Definitely not. The issue that I've faced is when my project hits about 5 or 6 interdependent or tightly coupled products that aren't necessarily running with a shared backlog, and they have product backlogs themselves versus what's my project and how do I get the consistent priority across all products. It's just a headache I need to think about as opposed to one you would.
So then I guess I would put that down to project management is the thing about like kind of work design. So, you do your work breakdown structures and you develop your streams of work and all that sort of stuff. But architecture does the same thing. So you could you could fix this with architecture. But I'll also like go back to the first point I made, which is I don't think project management and agile are different things. I think they're just different styles of the same. Or agile is a style of doing project management, and project management's a style of doing software development, right? Like they're not directly opposite each other, or even on a spectrum.
I think they're like a marriage when you're delivering software projects.
Right.
They're both equally important, and they both run alongside each other, making the whole better. But I'm going to say there's two parts in the marriage. Together they're better.
Right. Like we also can see use of agile methods in soft skills projects like process improvement or HR work or marketing teams and stuff like that. So I don't think it's And then again, like when you actually strip away the language of software, like so you can take pair programming and test-driven development and things like that out of the equation, but you can still stick with the cross-functional teams and the short cycles and the feedback from end users and stuff. Like you can apply that to construction and manufacturing as well, right? There's different kind of constraints that come with each industry. So with say manufacturing, you got your fit out of your factory or your machines or whatever, but like I don't.
Yeah, look, I'm interested in hearing Johan's comments here, but I would just say that that's communication 101. Would I run a process project in Agile? Probably I'd use a lot of the principles like that engagement, but I'd just call that being kind, talking to people and being open. That, that's...
Johan, let's, we didn't, listen to your
I'm happy to sit here and listen to them, go on a little bit. Look, to be honest, in any delivery role that I've taken on, I don't think I've ever just sat down at some point and thought, you know what, I want to do this traditional. Do you know what, I want to do this agile. I can't remember. I'm just trying to think back. I don't think I've ever thought through that. I've looked at the situation, try to figure out what's going on, what's the complexity, what's the certainty, and then try and work through how I go about navigating this piece of work to get it delivered. And that could be drawing on any piece of anything that's out there, I'm a massive fan, obviously, of your sort of traditional agile ways of working, feedback loops and all that, but you sort of build that into the structure as well, right? So I'd say, look, it's that toolkit conversation once again, drawing from whatever you need to in order to deliver an outcome. That's my sort of take on it. If you were to go down let's say the theoretical path of what you should and shouldn't be doing, we've heard of the Kinefin models and so on. It typically states that anything that's complex should be delivered using an agile way of working, and that's purely taking into consideration that there's an explorative component to it. So you could be looking at design thinking and that sort of thing as well, right? But look, the theory is one part, practice is another, and I'm a fan of just looking at the situation you're in and then using whatever you have in your toolkit. And the more you know, the more you have it under your umbrella. And agile is a broad statement in its own right, a broad word at least. There's so many things that sit underneath that umbrella, from team agility to lean to scale agile to design thinking. There's so many things that sit under or near it. I think it's good to be across all of that, as well as some of the more traditional ways of doing things. I remember, sort of digress a little bit, I went for my first Scrum training. And I was a project manager at the time, and just a bit concerned about this whole agile thing as well, because they said there was no role for a PM in Scrum. So I asked the trainer, and he was back then Yahoo was a big deal, and he was the head of product at Yahoo. And I asked him, well, how do you manage risk in Scrum? And he was like, oh, you know what? You talk about it, you just stand up and then you pop it in the backlog. It's okay. All right, let me come back to you on that one. But I think there's good bits to draw from everything that's out there. I've not done that since. There's different ways of managing risks and some of the complexities of project environments or the complex environments we work in. And it's good to draw from whatever that's out there, to be honest.
So obviously, you all, I guess, mentioned that you need to have a bit of experience, and no one comes to the project and think, oh, should I do traditional or should I do agile? But my question would be like, but when you more starting out, so obviously when you have 15 years of experience, or you look at the different projects and you decide what tools you will be using. But when you're starting out, it's probably much harder to decide, how you're going to approach that project. And also, some organizations probably will advise you to go with the certain tools and certain methodology. How do you think the people who maybe don't have as much experience in project management, maybe early in their career, how they would navigate this? So should they just use the methodology that the company offered them to use, or how would you go about this? Maybe Richard is knocking. We'll start with Richard.
Yeah, I'm nodding my head because that's how I got into project management. I kind of came through a developer pathway. Nowadays, if Agile was available back in the dinosaurs age when I was a developer, that I probably would have gone directly into becoming a Scrum Master. And the reason for that would have been that I kind of see that as a test bed. Like, you can't go from being no project management experience to becoming the senior project manager on a digital transformation. It doesn't happen. So you've got to look at your project management career and what are the steps that I need to take, and where can I get the most sort of diverse range of projects for the domain that I'm working in. So for me, I don't necessarily buy into the idea that I would be able to apply my project management skills across any domain. Potentially there'd be things that can cross over, but would I want to go and build a skyscraper? No. Do they use project management? For sure. But understand the domain you're in and then see what's most appropriate for that, for your next step. That's what I'd say. And then try and move around to understand different, if you're just going to stay in the digital team, for example, and just deliver digital iterations, that's great, but you're not going to be get that experience to then go, I want to run a program now with multiple streams in it. It just won't work.
Okay. Craig, over to you. So yes, so how do you how do you decide? Where you start?
I've got a very strong opinion on this. I think when you turn up to an organization and there's a project management framework, just fucking use it, right? You haven't been invited to innovate on how the organization operates. You've been invited to get a job done, right? Go do the job that you're being paid to do, right? Stay within the lines, right? If you do well at that, they will invite you to be a system hacker and to try to improve the organization, right? So I just think just master the thing in front of you. And there's good, performance doesn't come from getting these big, wide open frameworks. Becoming a master in PMI or Prince2 or Scrum or whatever isn't going to generate good or bad outcomes. They're just libraries of tools to use, right? What's going to generate a good outcome is paying attention to the details, paying attention to the people, setting up the environment so that people can perform well, right? And so, Rich and Johan and I all agree that good, high volume, high quality communication is the platform for all success, right? And then there's flavors of how you do it, right? There's methods and techniques that you can draw on from this body of knowledge that will help you get the job done. So, if you are hired into an organization to say, should we use, Prince2 or PMI or whatever, right? My view is and again, unfortunately, Rich and Johan are going to agree with this. My view is craft your own, right? Build one that's appropriate for your organization and the jobs that you're doing, right? Do you disagree, Rich? That was a bit of a hesitant nod.
No, I don't disagree at all. And I 100%, one of the values of our business is earn the right. And I think I touched on it before. You don't go into an organization thinking you're going to rewrite everything they're doing. Go and adopt what they're doing and go and do it by how they're currently doing it. Follow it because you'll learn while you're doing it. And then you can improve on it later once you become an expert.
Totally. By the way, while you were talking before, Rich, and Johan, I'd love you to comment on this one. Sorry, Jana. I am dismayed that Scrum Master is actually a job that people hold, right? it's been going on for more than a decade, and I still remain shocked that it's actually a job, right? Like, I think it's a role that a person on a team puts on, and like you can even deconstruct the role into parts, and different people can play different aspects of the role, right? Like this notion of like Scrum as agile, obviously all of the viewers all know that that's just like a straw man myth that doesn't really hold any water. But like the specialization of roles, right? Like, what special skill, you break it down and think logically, what special skill do you bring to the table if you're a project manager, or if you're a Scrum Master, or a business analyst, or a product owner, or an agile coach, or whatever, right? Like if there's a thing that you bring to the table, right? Like, I know Scrum, right? Well, cool. Like it's a 16-page book, right? We can all learn Scrum, right? We can all go do a 2-day. It's pretty superficial, right? Where's your depth of experience, right? Like, is it in process improvement? Is it in project management? Is it in product design? Like, what are the things that you bring to the table that actually make you a serious contributor to the team, right? And then you start getting into, well, that Scrum Master is different from that, and that project manager is different from that. And it kind of brings us back to a unifying principle of like, it's the details of execution as a team that matter, right? And the frameworks are background things that might help us, but what really gets the job done is us as a bunch of people working together effectively.
And also, if you're a Scrum Master and listening and you're thinking, oh my God, what I'm going to do, we had the stream actually exactly on the topic. So you're a Scrum Master, so what's next? So if you're a Scrum Master and you just joined this stream, go and listen to the stream we did a few weeks ago, specifically about Scrum Master role. Johan, I think we kind of, didn't hear your answer to the question in terms of like, when you're starting out, how do you decide where you're starting, what methodology you're using? Yeah,
and I'll get to that, but I think Craig asked me to respond to his question as well. It's thank you, Craig. I appreciate that. Look, in terms of that Scrum Master, I do agree it's a hybrid role. It can be worn by any member of a mature-ish squad or Scrum team. What I have noticed though with Scrum Masters is that while their inward-facing capabilities might be strong, particularly working in that squad, when it comes to things that sit outside the squad, like removing impediments, they tend to struggle a bit, and that's a maturity thing. But that's also touching on some of those PM project management type skills, going up to people above and beyond their team, to leads. Sometimes the execs, and saying, hey, you know what, this team is blocked because of you, and you need to do something about it. A lot of them tend to lack courage or don't have the authority to have that type of conversation, depending on the type of organization they're working for. And I think that's where Scrum Masters tend to come undone a little bit. And I'm also noticing that the industry is starting to rename those roles from Scrum Master to either delivery lead or agile PM or iteration manager or something to that effect, because there's that skill which is managing upward and managing execs that's not necessarily included in that Scrum Master hatted type role. Certainly I'd expect a Scrum Master, a really good Scrum Master, to be able to have those conversations and unblock things from outside the squad. And also to protect the team, to be that shade umbrella, for lack of better words, for things coming towards the team to try and disrupt it, right? And I think that's where some of those more experienced skill sets from PM or delivery leadership that come into play. Yeah. So hopefully, Craig, that helps a little bit there.
Yes.
Going back to Jana's question, so I think you're agreeing absolutely with Rich and Craig there. Find a good organization. Find a good organization to work for. There are a lot of organizations that do things haphazardly or not in the best manner. But try and find a good organization to work for, where you can learn how they deliver projects. That was something that I certainly look forward to when I in my early years in my career. I wanted to work for a big firm that was into massive system integration pieces of work, and I wanted to learn how they deliver stuff. And I remember walking in, even on day one, into this organization saying, I want to learn how you deliver big pieces of work. Those $20 million type projects. How do you deliver them at scale? Right? So find a good organization. I'd say, in alignment with what Craig and Rich were saying. But I'd also say two more things, and one is there's lots of content online now on how what good delivery looks like. I wrote an article a few years back on how Salesforce deliver projects. Like that, there's plenty of stuff. There's these meetups, Jana, that you run. There's plenty of meetups out there. Peter Lamb's meetup. There's so many meetups out there. We can learn so much from people. And that brings me to my last point, which is find a good mentor, a good delivery person who can show you the ropes and how to navigate and manage these things. Like even going back to Craig's previous question, if you're a Scrum Master and you want to learn and understand how to navigate the complex part of that role, let's say, right, managing above and protecting your team, try and find someone in a delivery space who's done that in the past and is able to do that, and learn from them, understand how they manage that and navigate those challenging conversations and situations.
There you go. So, and I think it's a really good comment here. We got in terms of do it by the book. Just make sure you write that book. I think that's a great advice, Yumpa. I like that one. So that's a great start at the project manager. So there's a few comments coming through, guys. So I'll just quickly run through. Henry saying, I like the idea of custom process, on which best suits organization. There's a massive comments here from, I think the whole comment didn't get, but basically conveying a PM approach, transparency across multi-functions and multidisciplinary team is essential, I bet, for challenging tasks. So it's basically a whole discussion going on LinkedIn here between the comments. Agnostic is the correct approach. Priority and learning ways of communication and team building is essential no matter what tool set you're using. Looks like, majority of people kind of agree here. And Peter Lamb, of course, here. Thank you for shout out. Meetup is definitely an informal way of connecting and learning. Peter's next event is actually on, I believe, on the 4th of June on Tuesday. So guys, make sure if you are into project management, join this one. So I know I just kind of ran through those comments, but anyone wanna, guys, anyone wanna add anything based on the comments we received and discussion? So I'll just kind of open it a little bit for discussion now. Craig, are you?
I have an assertion that I'd like the guys to respond to. I was thinking about what project, back to the very first question, like what's the difference between project management and agile, and like we're all very wishy-washy on is there really a difference? But a good question is like, what's project management, or what's a project, right? And a reflection that I've had, and these esteemed experts might have a different view, but I'd be pretty keen to hear it, is I think a project is an interruption, right? Or an intervention, right? Because there's the way we do business and it's kind of normal, right? And we want to change that and we want to do something different, right? And the difference between product management or service management and project management is products and services go for a long time, and they're just there and they gradually improve and get better and add things to them and stuff. But projects are actually about changing things from the way they used to be to the way they're going to be. And I think when you're an interventionist, you have to be the sort of person that's going to break the rules and challenge people and face difficult conversations and bring courage to those conversations and stuff like that. And if you want to be a process person, if you want to follow the rules and stay within the lines, I don't think you'll ever be a great project manager. There's an assertion for you, boys. What do you reckon?
Johan, what do you think? Are you breaking the rules regularly?
I like that word, intervention. I suppose, answer that with a question. If everything worked perfectly well, if we didn't have layers and structures and constraints in our systems, would we need project managers?
Yes. And I'm going to say, because again, you're the conductor of the orchestra. You can hear all these musical instruments and they all sound beautiful by themselves, but when you bring them together, you get the symphony. If they don't come in at the right time, you're going to just get a clattering of noise, and you need somebody to be able to conduct that. And I'll probably go one step further, that yes, a project is really about introducing change, but the definition of a project is it has a start and an end date. So kind of saying you're doing agile project management sometimes is a bit of an oxymoron, because you're trying to constrain something to an end date that shouldn't really have an end date, because you really should be focused on customer value, which means you're constantly prioritizing the changes that are coming in. You're constantly changing and you're welcoming change. So a project isn't doing that. A project would be saying, I'm protecting the scope of this project unless there's something really essential that needs to come in, and then I'm managing it by change request. So whereas in an agile show, you'd normally be managing it by priority. And a sprint could, just during your sprint planning, you would say, hey, something's out, we're bringing this in, it's high priority, we're delivering value for the customer as fast as we can.
So Rich, you're running a project and you're doing these fortnightly or whatever sprints, and 2-3 months into this 6-month or 9-month project, you discover that the target you're heading for is the wrong one. Obviously, you're going to change direction. What about project management and scope management needs to be considered in a situation like that?
Well, it really depends, because you need to think about the context of, are you delivering to production, which most agile iterative change would do, or are you delivering in an iterative big bang case where traditional would be going and you're delivering to a UAT environment? If you get 6 months down the track and you go, we're doing the wrong thing, this is where your return on investment, your benefits case, you'd have to really go and say, should we can this project? Whereas if you're doing iterative deliveries to an agile product or an outcome that you're delivering to production, you're actually getting feedback from each 2-week iteration. What's the customer think of where we're going? So from that perspective, understanding your environment and your context is key, because then you really want to be delivering agile, right? Because you don't want to get 6 months down and think, oh crap, we're doing the wrong thing. But when you're in an environment that you actually, you know what the outcome is that you want to deliver, it's not something that's going to change on a daily basis from the customer's perspective. You can actually manage that through change request, or by readjusting the benefits and saying, are we still actually doing the right thing here? So I agree with you. You can pivot quicker.
I think that's but that thing of we're going to do it or we're going to stop, versus with a product we're just going to change how we do it. That's the kind of the distinguishing thing there. Yeah. I like at a portfolio level, so when you're a corporate IT portfolio or a corporate change portfolio, right? They're actually running heaps of projects, and they know statistically that a third of them are going to be rubbish, a third of them are going to be mediocre, and a third of them are going to be great, right? Or whatever the spread is for that particular company. So maybe also, guys, you both work in corporate environments. How do you think about when you're managing a project, but you're part of a portfolio where there's kind of a known failure rate? How do you reconcile that?
I could go from a portfolio perspective, because I used to run a large technology portfolio for an enterprise. I had 25 PMs, about 50 projects concurrently. My thought wasn't how many are going to fail. My thought was, how many will we need to recover and push? And the reason is, I'll give you the reason, wasn't because technology was doing the wrong thing. It was because you will have multiple different stakeholders, and aligning leadership and stakeholders on what is the priority for the organization versus what is the priority in their KPIs is the hardest thing to manage. And the project manager is never going to be able to do that. The senior leadership and the sponsors should be the ones influencing what you're doing from a business perspective. And there should be a business strategy that you're aligning each project to, because that way you can go back to the strategy. Is the strategy still valid? Are we doing the right thing to accomplish that strategy? I don't think you're going to be able to affect that as a project manager other than communicating through your status reporting. So in an agile way, would you be able to do that? Not 100% sure where your reporting comes from for that without having the project management element across it. I'm happy to receive.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I think
there's a structural thing, like product architect, like product managers and stuff as an alternative to project managers. But I think that's a great answer. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks.
Johan, anything to add to this from your side?
Yeah, just thinking through what you're saying there, Rich. So I was thinking that if the project manager is needed to navigate the complexity of the structure of that system, then wouldn't a better approach be to resolve the complexity of the structure and the system and make it seamless and easier for work to flow through it?
I love where you're coming from, and when you find utopia, give me a call. I want to come. But I'm going to put it out there. In my experience, I was very ignorant, not willingly, just from my experience of being a developer and coming into project management. I thought everything started and ended in IT, and we were delivering what the business needed, so they needed to wait on us. Like we were the drivers because it was the most impact came from us. When I got into sort of solution design and architecture, I started realizing there's a number of different impacted areas here. If I'd come from a BA background, I would have learned this a lot quicker, by the way. So good on you if you are a BA or were a BA. But I didn't. Now, I think what you're talking about there is the experience that you get from working on a number of different types of projects and working on makes you a better communicator. When you're a better communicator, you learn that there's a number of different teams that might not be speaking to each other in different forums. So how do you correct that? You're never going to correct that when different teams have different outcomes for them in a large environment. And they have their own unique projects that they're running as well as enterprise-wide projects. So somebody has to do that communicating piece, which is the glue that holds all those parts together. That's the project manager. You can't get away from it. As soon as you start involving more than 2 to 3 teams, you need somebody to coordinate that. In my view.
I appreciate the complexity of that role. Absolutely. And I think that's why we need good PMs. And you're right there, Rich, as well, because, 3/4 of the organizations out there don't have that utopia. But I also think that all of us has a little bit of a responsibility to try and bring us at least a little bit closer to that utopia as much as we can to make all our lives a little bit easier.
100%, but my life would be too easy then because I wouldn't have a job. So...
None of us would then, right?
Craig, you wanted to add something?
Yeah. Like we've kind of dived into project management. I know you're running out of time, Jana, so you probably want to take control. But like on the flip side, like over in the agile territory, right? Like, yeah, we talk about like what does great project management or program management look like, and the skills around communication, integration, coordination, like getting everyone on the same page, signaling that there's going to be change, all that sort of stuff. Over in the agile world, right? Like where they're the kind of the superordinated values, right? What do we get wrong over there, right? Yeah, attention to detail in these things, right? Like we're actually not very good at communicating. We are very, like you said, Rich, very focused on the local territory, not the global scope, right? Because people aren't thinking more holistically, and you do need those integrators to kind of bring people together. Like, what's the agile version of a project manager? Like, over in the, what was it, Airbnb? Like, turned all the product managers back into program managers, right? And there's like a strong case over in Silicon Valley these days for more project managers, less product managers, because it simplifies execution, right? So it's horses for courses. You got to pick and choose what roles you need for what jobs. And there's another thing too, which is like earlier in a product lifecycle or a company lifecycle, you want people kind of don't stay between the lines, that like can kind of play different roles depending on the needs of the day, because the needs of the day change every 6 months. Thanks for coming to my lecture.
Thank you for coming to TED Talk. So yes, we are a bit running over the time. So I just want to a bit summarize, because interesting enough, if you watch any other video on YouTube that with the title, The Difference Between Agile and Traditional Project Management, they will give you like 6 points. This is the difference, the traditional doing this way, the agile doing this way. That's what you need to do if you're running this methodology. That's what you need to do that you're running this. So I think in our today's discussion, it's quite obvious that it's not about that at all. It's about how we actually get the things done, what's the fit for purpose, how we deliver, how we communicate with the teams, how we communicate with people. So I think I kind of feel that that's been like the biggest takeaway from today's discussion. But I just want each of you, so we literally have like a 5 minutes, maybe each of you can sort of summarize based on what we all talk about today. What's, coming back to that topic. So if we summarize in 1 minute, traditional versus agile project management. So what is our conclusion from our today's discussion? Maybe we'll start with Johan. Johan, so what's your 1 minute summary?
I don't know about 1 minute, but I'll try for 30 seconds. Look, I'd say just be absolutely focused on value and outcome. So what are we delivering? What's the value? What are the outcomes we're delivering to our customers, the business, and so on? Don't get into the traditional versus agile project management debate. I don't think it's worth anyone's time, to be honest. But be very conscious of the fact that there's a lot of theory out there. There's a lot of frameworks and methodologies, ways of working, experience, and so on. Whether it be your Prince tools, your PMPs, your Agile, Scrum, Lean, Kanban, Safe, Less That, whatever it is, get across all those frameworks, because there's a lot of wisdom in most of them, and have that toolkit ready. So whatever situation you're facing, you're able to draw from any one of those tools within that toolkit and apply it within the environment and situation you're in.
Yeah. Craig, what about you? If you summarize today's discussion. Unmute.
Sorry, thanks. Look, I would say, you've heard that we all think communication and paying attention to the details in front of you and all that sort of stuff is the essence of what needs to be done. I disagree a bit, Johan, with go out and search the internet and read all the project frameworks, because there's so much content out there, you'll just kind of get confused. I think what you need to do is find a reliable few sources and work with those. And I think, I just posted in the chat some stuff from Richard Hackman's he's a guru on teams and leaders and stuff like that. The 6 things he thinks managers should do. And I think if you think about who are the experts in the world, right, and what they think are the most 4 or 5 or 6, whatever important things, start to be good at 2 or 3 of those and build on that.
Yeah. Richard, over to you. So
Cool. So I would change the heading. I talk a lot about now project delivery as opposed to project management. And when I mentor people or when I talk to people about project management or delivery, I talk about how do you become a better leader versus a manager. So I agree with Craig. I agree with Johan. I think become a leader and explore leadership and team building and those kinds of communication skills, because the softer skills are a lot more important. You can teach somebody the administrative tasks, but you can't necessarily, it takes experience and time to learn a lot of the soft skills.
So do we kind of agree if you're applying for a job and it says Agile Project Management on the title, it kind of just doesn't matter. It's still project management. I feel like it's a big question, but I mean, we only have 30 seconds. But, so when you're applying for a job, you see Agile Project Management and Project Manager role. Do you need to think that, it's something different, or you kind of think it's still a project management role?
Well, they're asking you for Agile, so you got to go read the manual and understand the basics, right? And to be able to demonstrate that you know what a sprint is and you know the jargon and all that sort of stuff, and to be able to talk to that is important. But I think the essential truth is it's all the same stuff.
Do we
if you get the interview for that, if you get the interview for that job, ask them in the interview. Really critical. Ask them, how do they run currently? What do they do? Are they using sprints? Are they using iterative? 9 times out of 10, when I speak to clients, they're using a combination. And that's why you look at LinkedIn and you say, steer clear of waterfall, agile or wagile, whatever they call it. 90% of organizations are going to use a combination that fits their purpose.
Yeah. When I see that sort of role being advertised, I'd sort of translate that to there's some structure and there's some some rigor around the structure and the system, but you're also expected to deliver in an iterative manner. So expect to be involved in steer codes and risk management, issue management, that sort of thing. But your team may also be doing stand-ups in the morning.
Okay, we're totally running out of time, guys. We need the last thing to do before we finish. We need to do a giveaway. And if people don't know what's a giveaway on this channel, it's a 30 minutes virtual coffee chat with our speakers. So we probably didn't have time to read all the comments today, so it was like a full-on discussion. But now our speakers have a chance to go through the comments, and they will pick the person that they want to continue the chat and hopefully, answer the questions further. So while you guys looking at the comments and choosing the winners for the giveaway, I'll just do the announcement for next week. So next week is the 29th of May. I'm not going to run the stream next week because 29th of May is my birthday. Here we go. So I decided not to run the live stream on my birthday and do something else, but I'm going to run the stream as usual on Wednesday on the 5th of June. And the topic of our stream on the 5th of June will be, what does a data engineer do and how to become one? So we'll obviously talk about the data engineering roles and responsibilities, and also maybe try to kind of define what's the role and what's the difference between data engineering and data analyst and so on. So will be happening on the 5th of June. And also, guys, like every Tuesday morning, we have a really quick 15-minute stream at 7:45 a.m. So it's just some mind hacks, like productivity tips and time management and other healthy habits practices. So next week, we'll still do Tuesday morning at 7:45 a.m. So if you will be missing me so much, and because there is no Wednesday stream next week. Okay, anyway, guys, so we have some winners there. Craig is going to talk with Vikram. Where is Vikram? Oh my God, so many comments today. Sorry, guys, I'm just totally running out of time today. Vikram, get a few comments there, so I'll make sure I'll connect you there, and you can have a chat. Johan gonna talk with James Casters. James is our, James is always here. James is here every Wednesday. You like these people who always here and always a fan. Jana's discussion always informative and great. There's a person here every Wednesday. So thank you, James. So I'll connect you with Johan and reach where we choose. Oh, that's a difficult name there. Dun, dun, dun.
I think it's Martin. Is it Martin?
Is it the same person?
Yeah, I think so. That's the one.
Martin, yes, because it's on the YouTube, on the LinkedIn. Here we go. Make sure. Here we go. Martin, make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn so that I can connect everyone for the stream. Okay, so we've done that. So obviously, as usual, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for all your input. I feel like we can talk about for another 3 hours on this topic, but I'm sure we organize something similar in the upcoming weeks. Thank you so much, guys, for your time, and I'll see everyone next Tuesday. Thank you, and. If you have some time to answer to some comments as well, you're always welcome to offline, obviously. Thank you, and see you around next week.